Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Combating Cancer. If you're new here, I just want to say hello, and I'm so glad that you guys have decided to join this journey with me. A little bit of background information about me is that I was diagnosed with stage 3 astrocytoma brain cancer at the age of 19. I created this platform because I wanted to have a safe, honest space for those either in active treatment, in remission, or grieving the loss of a loved one to come on and share their experiences because cancer is such a terrible disease and no one should have to fight it alone. So today I have a very special guest. I have Jake Messier, and I'm so excited to have him on because, as you know, it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So hi, Jake. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm so glad that you're on here to talk today because I think that this is such an important month, and I'm glad to bring someone that actively knows all about this to come on and share it with my listeners so they become more informed.
Sure, no problem. It's a busy month, Everybody wants to lump in all their breast cancer stuff into October, so thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. It was actually pretty funny. I was talking to my boyfriend that I was going to have you on, and he was like, oh, that's so cool. What type of cancer does he have? What's his realm that he's going to be talking about today? And I was like, he actually has breast cancer. And he was like, wait a second, guys can get breast cancer too? And I was like, yes, guys can get breast cancer. This is exactly why.
This is the reason why we're doing it. I probably have that conversation 10 times a day. Not that I'm out there actively trying to spread the word. No, I am actually out there trying to spread the word. But it's one of those things that I am overwhelmed with how many men don't know. And especially with breast cancer being the most researched, the most prevalent, the biggest cancer out there, the fact that it is so female heavy. And that's due to the largest and best marketing campaign in the history of mankind over the past 40 years, which is the Pink campaign. And I'm not going to take anything away from it. The Pink campaign is the reason why I get to sit here on this podcast, right? It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But at the same time, most people don't know that guys can get it as well. In fact, there's a stat out there that says 85% of guys that have breast cancer prevalent in their lives, meaning a mother, a sister, a wife, 85% of those guys don't know that they can get breast cancer. Education and awareness is key to what I'm doing every day.
Cancer does not discriminate whether you are a man or female. It can target everyone.
We all have mammary tissue. We all have nipples. If you are a human mammal, then you have breast tissue. And if you have breast tissue, then you can get breast cancer. It's really rare. Only 1% of all breast cancer cases are male. And this year, it's about 2,800 guys in the U.S. will come down with breast cancer. That's 1 in 726 guys. It's really rare. But where women are 1 in 8, we all know there's somebody in our sphere that has gotten breast cancer, right? As a woman, right? There's very few spheres that you enter that a guy has breast cancer.
I can say that you are the first man that I've encountered that has breast cancer. I can name you about 20 women off of the top of my head right now.
Right, exactly. I only know a handful of guys that have breast cancer. Even though I'm out there every day on social media, there's maybe 10 that I know. And I've never met another one in person. Like that's the level of rarity that we're at. Even though I'm in Boston and I go to Dana-Farber is, as far as we know, the only cancer center in the world that has a dedicated male breast cancer department. But even them, there's only a handful of guys that go to that. So it's considered a rare cancer. If we weren't under the big uber pink umbrella of breast cancer, right? We would be a rare cancer. I tell this story. I say, have you ever heard of appendix cancer? I've never heard of appendix cancer, but appendix cancer, the same number of guys that get breast cancer are going to get appendix cancer this year. And so therefore, I am really happy to be under the big pink umbrella because we are recognized, we are seen, we are understood. And in some cases, we are researched. In a lot of ways, we are not. There's about 65% of all breast cancer research intentionally excludes men. And at first I was like, wait, that's not fair. But then I was like, well, actually, we are so statistically irrelevant that if you try to interject the male populace into that, we skew the numbers because it looks like men aren't getting breast cancer. So I get it. For research purposes, if you're trying to do something that has to exclude men, I understand. At the same time, there has to be research done on the differentiators between men and female breast cancer. It was only 2018 when basically a scientist came out and said, there's a definitive difference between male and female breast cancer. That's only a handful of years ago. And since then, maybe 2 research initiatives in the 75-year span of people doing breast cancer research. One of them is actually happening at Dana-Farber, which is fantastic. It's called the Ethan trial. Ethan is not a name. It's an acronym for something. I don't know. But it's the Ethan trial. And basically, they're trying to recruit men into it that have a specific kind of breast cancer, but they're trying to keep them out of chemo, which, did you have chemo?
I did have chemo.
Whenever I say, chemo, people are like, oh yeah, and even if you've never been through it, you're like, oh yeah, chemo has to suck. And believe me, it does. But what they're trying to do with the Ethan trial is send guys through radiation and surgery and have them avoid chemo. And it's having a really significant impact. I know one of the guys really well. He's another social media influencer, Rich Loud. I'm the guy with stage 4 breast cancer. He's the dude with breast cancer on social media. But he's actually part of the Ethan trial. And he went through surgery and he went through radiation, and they have pretty much cleared him and said he doesn't need to go to chemo. I mean, you're seeing these clinical trials in real time affect real people's lives. That's incredible. He's maybe a year behind me in treatment. It's not like we are decades apart. He's only a year behind me in treatment, and he doesn't have to go to chemo. That's an amazing thing. And it's only for this one specific but they're trying to branch it out, trying to figure out why. And part of it has to do with the biological differences between male and female breast cancer. I'm treated with data and research that has been built upon the female anatomy. They give me tamoxifen and Verzenio, which both of them are meant to tamp down all the estrogen in my body, right? And feeling that estrogen leads to increased risk of breast cancer, get rid of the estrogen, get rid of the increased risk. That's what they've been doing for women for like 40 years. Tamoxifan's been around for a long time and been highly successful. I'm not complaining about it, but is tamping down all the estrogen in my body to keep recurrence of breast cancer the best way to treat me? I don't know. And the problem is nobody knows, because nobody's ever done research into figuring out whether that's the best way to do it or not. Research is starting, but it's slow. At this point, what we want are answers. We don't want 5-year research studies. Let's have the research studies that are already going interject some male specimens into there so we can come up with some supplementary findings on, hey, these drugs worked really well on the female anatomy. They didn't really work on these mice very well because they were male mice. Okay, well, let's extrapolate out what those thoughts are, right? And maybe those findings then just get published and they go on to help another study. But there's stuff happening in the realm of male breast cancer, which as of right now, there really isn't.
Yeah, and which can be extremely frustrating. I mean, you mentioned how great it is to be under that pink umbrella, to have that awareness, but it's still the matter of you're getting treated the same way women are getting treatment, and you guys are biologically not the same, which is very frustrating. And I think that's why you advocating and having social media platforms is just so amazing, because although the treatment is still the same and there hasn't been like a lot of improvements, but there's research starting to happen. There's more men out there being aware and saying, oh, shoot, this can happen to me too. How can I learn about this? How can I be proactive? And I just think that is so amazing that you were taking something terrible that happened to you and being like, I'm not just keeping this to myself. I'm going to let other men know so they're not blindsided. So they're not, oh my gosh, like what? How is this happening?
I think that's one of the most important things. When I was going through my treatment, I was documenting my treatment on social media. Thousands of other people document their journey on social media, right? Here's me going to chemo. Here's me having a good day. Here's me having a bad day. Here's me laughing and smiling with my family. Here's me in tears because I can't handle another day. My social media journey was very similar to a lot of other social media journeys that cover cancer. And then at some point I was like, well, I can either sit here and complain and do this, or I can take the uniqueness of my situation, the fact that I do have male breast cancer, the fact that I do have an extensive marketing and social media background, the fact that I've been on air as a DJ and as a reporter. I can talk in front of cameras and I can basically do this. I can either, like you said, turtle and just turn inside and just deal with this privately like so many people do. Or I can go out there and say, look, there are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of women out there talking about their breast cancer proudly in a way that solicits funds, that solicits awareness, that solicits just understanding that this can happen, which is still something that, I don't think anybody really thinks at this point that breast cancer isn't a thing. But when you talk about breast cancer being a thing in guys, we are 50 to 60 years behind women in terms of that awareness journey, right? We're just in the 70s and 80s where we're like, hey guys, breast cancer is the thing. That's what they were doing back then. And that's where we're at as men. And so I think having the ability to show men, and I get a lot of benefit out of my social media platforms. Yes, I'm out there and I try to post at least a couple times a day, but it's at least once a day. I get a lot of benefit because I get people in there that have said, oh my gosh, I hadn't scheduled my mammogram. And because I saw you, I scheduled my mammogram. That's amazing. Or I've had even more serious guys reach out to me on DM saying, hey, I got a lump in my chest or I got a lump in my armpit. What do you think? And I don't give any medical advice at all. My medical advice is, hey, go get checked out. And I try to alleviate their fears because the chances are in their favor that it's not going to be breast cancer, right? It's a 1% chance that it's going to be breast cancer. In fact, I went into my primary care physician before I was diagnosed. And I was like, hey, I got this weird stuff going on my armpit. And he looked at it and he listed off about 10 things that it could be. And none of them were cancer. It was a cyst. It was all these other things because it was so rare. But he did say at the end, yeah, look, there's a very small chance that it could be. So let's get you in for a mammogram and a biopsy and let's figure out what that is. I go in there and a week later I come back to the office and he comes walking in and he's like, I am so sorry. And I'm like, listen, I get it. I said, other people may not be as kind, but maybe you shouldn't do that in the future because I did in fact have breast cancer. And he was like, yeah, you're the first person. He goes, this doesn't even get covered in medical school, really. It's a footnote in medical school. It's like, they cover all this stuff on breast cancer and like, oh yeah, guys can get it too. It's like, it's literally the same thing I'm doing on TikTok, but that's what they cover in medical school. So he's like, it wasn't top of mind for me, but it's going to be from here on out, which is great. And if I can change a mind every day, and I get that I'm just one person and there's billions of people around the world, but if I can get some people every day to go, oh, I didn't know that. And I'm just going to put that in the back of my head. So that 30 years from now, the majority of people on TikTok are younger people, 30 and below. And so the chances of them getting breast cancer are very low. If they store that piece of knowledge in their brain, and 30 years from now, that guy's sitting in front of a mirror and he's like, that's a weird thing. But you know what? Somewhere along the way, I learned that guys can get breast cancer. Then yeah, he's not going to wait the 4 to 5 months that I waited to go to the doctor because that's what I did. I felt this lump. And I was like, that's weird. Why would it be anything other than a cyst or anything else? Why would it be anything else? And so when it didn't go away and it got worse, or it didn't get worse, it just didn't go away. And I was like, again, well, that's weird. And it still took me a couple months to get to the doctor. When I got to the doctor, I was diagnosed, I was already at stage 3. And then a year later, I went metastatic when I got a small tumor on my hip bone. And so I've been in that stage for about a year and a half. I'm currently no evidence of disease, which is amazing. You're in as close to remission as you're ever going to get, right? You're in this status where they can't find tumors in your body. That status could last for 6 months or it could last for 6 years. You just don't ever know. But I will be very grateful because only about 15% of metastatic breast cancer patients actually ever see NED. So I'm very happy. It's the 1% that I didn't do poorly in because I'm like, 99% of women, 1% of guys. Oh, I'm going to suck at that one. No, I get the 1%. When I did chemo, I forget the big long name of the red devil. There's the red devil and then there's Taxol. And they were like, oh my gosh, the red devil is called the red devil for a reason, right? It's going to wipe you out. And I got into it and I was like, it sucked, but it wasn't terrible, right? They put me on Taxol, which everybody told me, oh my gosh, wait till you get to Taxol. It's so much easier. Taxol wiped me out, annihilated me. And I was like, I went to talk to my
guys are liars.
Right. And they were like, oh, there's only like 10% of people that actually do worse. And I'm like, damn it. Like every time there's a low percentage, count on me. I'm going to be the guy. So it's one of those things that when I went through that journey of treatment, the true treatment journey right now, I'm in a survivorship journey, right? That's where I'm at right now. Cancer doesn't ever go away. That's one of the things that I've learned. I think a lot of people, when you're done, you ring the bell, you're done with radiation, and you're like, okay, just going to go back to work on Monday now. And I worked the entire time I was in treatment, but even now I'm 9 months out of treatment. My final radiation was in late February, and I'm just now starting to feel like myself. Just even in the past month or so, I went through 6 months. It was probably my worst depression and worst mental health was when I was finished treatment. And I think that there's this real story of survivorship, because when you're in treatment, you're supported. You got the psychology team. You've got all these people around you. You've got all this stuff around you all the time. And then all of a sudden they're like, ring the bell. And you're like, okay. And not only that, but the world then expects you to move on too, right? The world, it's not just a matter of you feeling a little bit unsupported. And look, I go to Dana-Farber and there are lots of support networks, but at the same time, you don't have that nurse navigator, all that stuff in your portal. You don't have a lot of people out there supporting you. And so there's this organization called the Light Foundation that I'm working with. What their real big mission is survivorship. It's the 6 months to a year when you finish treatment that you oftentimes feel the most alone. I can tell you that my mental health, even though I was in chemo and surgeries and all these other things, my mental health was the worst 4 to 6 months after survivorship. And so the Light Foundation comes up with one-on-one coaching. Their goal would be everybody coming out of treatment in breast cancer gets a one-on-one coach to help them with everything from nutrition to exercise to your mental health to everything of just trying to get you back to some kind of normalcy, right? That's what we're trying to get back to. It's just trying to get back to the way we were in some way, but also a changed person. You're never going to go back to the way you were. That's something that I had to learn. I had been on a pretty significant self-awareness journey before I got sick. I lost 100 pounds. I had a stroke. I was in really bad shape in 2018, 2019. So in 2020, I was barreling towards 300 pounds. And I said, basically, look, I can either make a choice and do this or I can not. And I decided to not. And that's when I lost about 100 pounds and got my life in order. And most of that came from being in intense therapy and turning over all the emotional and spiritual and mental rocks that I had over decades, not just because of breast cancer. I did all this emotional and mental work in 2020, 2021, and 22, that when I get to 2023 and they're like, hey, you have breast cancer, I'm like, well, that really sucks. But I'm also in the best shape of my life to be able to take on this journey. Not the best shape physically. I was 51 when I was diagnosed. I was a Marine for 10 years. I was probably in better shape when I was 26 than now, but better shape mentally, better shape emotionally, better shape spiritually to be able to handle this. And because of that, because I had done all, I think what a lot of people do when they get a cancer diagnosis, and I don't necessarily mean people when they're 19, although it could happen when you're 19, but it happens a little bit. I can tell you it happens when you're older, that when you get that cancer diagnosis, you sort of go through this looking for the answers of life. I had done all of that work. I had done all of that stuff before I got sick. So that when I was sick, I was able to actually then turn on my social and look outwardly and not as inwardly as I was. And so I think a lot of people found help in the fact that I was trying to help them, even though I was in treatment. I had this attitude and this positiveness about me that was different than I think a lot of other people that were on social, because I was in treatment, fighting for my life, but still actively trying to help other people, to the point where my first cancer center, before I ended up at Dana-Farber, I was about 3 months into chemo and they reached out to me saying, hey, you've got like such a positive attitude and everything else. Would you mind being like a coach to other people in chemo? And that's usually something that happens after you're done with chemo. Like you're usually, okay, yeah, now, like at this point in my life, yeah, now I could go back and be a very compassionate coach to people in chemo. But I'm sitting there and I'm looking at them, I'm like, I'm currently in chemo and you want me to, go and help people? It's just, no, I can't do that.
No, you're booked and busy already.
Right. But at the same time, now that I've thought about it, I'm not angry about it, but I've thought about it, that I was I was already doing that, right? And I probably could have taken that on. I was already doing that on social media. So this advocacy work of what I've been doing really hasn't changed my entire, now it's just become bigger. I have my social platforms. If I was only talking to the male breast cancer crowd, I'd be talking to a very small crowd. So I try to talk to the cancer crowd at first, which is, why I'm talking to you. I'm cancer crowd, because doesn't matter what you have. If you've had that conversation with the doctor that says, you have cancer, then you're in the club.
Yeah, we're basically best friends.
Exactly. It doesn't matter what it is. And so we can have those commonalities. And so I start with the cancer crowd, right? Everybody that's affected, caregivers, patients, oncologists. And then I dive into breast cancer, which is a huge audience in and of itself, right? And then I get to male breast cancer, which needs to become a bigger audience. But if that's all the audience I was talking to, we wouldn't be talking to too many people. I start with the cancer audience so that I can interject, hey, guys can get breast cancer. If I was just talking to the male breast cancer crowd saying, hey, guys can get breast cancer, you know who already knows that? The 15 guys that I'm already talking to that get breast cancer, right? So we talk on a much larger scale, and we try to talk things that are, yes, there are things specific to male breast cancer. There are things specific to breast cancer, male or female. There are things specific to just being a cancer patient. And then part of my social is just being a human being. The algorithm doesn't like that there are days that I don't talk about cancer on my social media, right? I'm going to talk about baking cookies with my grandkids. And I'm talking about throwing the ball with the dog, because that's what living during this actually matters. Am I just going to spend my time left on this earth dying? Or am I going to spend the time that I have left on this earth living in between my scans? When the scans come up and I have to face, this could be the scan that I'm not NED anymore, right? There's a certain amount of anxiety or scanxiety that comes from that, right? About a week before I start feeling it. I go out every 3 to 4 months and I start feeling it about a week before, that antsiness, that uncomfortable, that, man, I do not want to go back to where I was. All of those kinds of things. And that anxiety comes back. And then I get my PET scan, and the past few, they come back crystal clear, which is, I'm going to knock on all the wood right now. But understanding that scanxiety is real. When I do posts about scanxiety, I'm not just talking to the breast cancer crowd. I'm talking to a lot of people, because it doesn't matter what you have. You don't even have to be in cancer. If you're just, all kinds of diseases and everything else, people comment on that. I did a post the other day that went, I'm going to put viral, because viral in my world is a much smaller number than going viral in the real world. I have 32,000 people on TikTok. That's not, an influencer at all. But at the same time, in the cancer world, 32,000 people talking about male breast cancer is a really significant number. And so I did one of these. There was a trend that you're certainly young, and so you're on TikTok. The trend of, tell me that time somebody said something really unhinged to you or whatever. And I just did this thing of like, tell me the time that somebody said something really unhinged during your cancer journey. And I'm not talking about, quote, oh, my aunt died from that. I'm talking about real stuff. It's going to make me put my phone down and go, oh my God, which happened a couple times. That post has right now 66,000 views and 4,200 likes and 300 comments. And people are sharing their horror stories. But that's the kind of thing, people feel like they can share it. And then, somebody's like, oh yeah, well, listen to mine. And they're like, oh my God. But you know what? We don't get a chance to say these things out loud to people very often. So when you have this really dark cancer humor, or when you have this thing going on, the fact that you can say these things out loud to somebody that actually gets it, that's what really matters. And I think that having these platforms, being a voice and a platform that people can trust, that it's a safe space, that I'm going to get it. People have said some really horrendous things that I'm like, oh my God, I put my phone down and like, okay, that's enough for today. Like
I literally made a list while I was going through cancer treatment that this just sparked that memory for me. It's 100 outrageous things people have said to me. And I will tell you that 90% of them were from my family. And I'm just like, I got to make an episode on this one time for any of my listeners, because they will make your jaw go to the ground and you're like, oh my gosh.
When you do that, just go on that TikTok and read some of the things. You can just read them out loud. Hey, this is from Jake's TikTok. This is what people said. Yeah, it's crazy what some of the people said. Some of it's heartbreaking. Some of it's truly, I'm going to put funny in quotes, because you're like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody would actually say that to somebody else. But a lot of it It's funny because in the breast cancer world, I didn't realize this was a thing, to be honest, because I'm a guy. But the amount of women that are told, oh my gosh, you have breast cancer, now you get a free boob job. Like, that is something that is said all the time. And I'm like, wait, that's not what this is. This is, I mean, yes, you do get reconstruction, but do you think that you get perfectly round? They're just jagged and they look great under a sweater, but that's about it. And so the fact that people are so insensitive that they're like, oh yeah, you get a free boob job or whatever those things are. I get that some people are either trying to make light of it or some people are trying to, but it doesn't happen in the male breast cancer world because I was offered reconstruction and I'm like, why? What are you going to do? What are you going to reconstruct? It's not much. I mean, yeah, if you want to slap a nipple on there, sure, but like, it looks the same except for the scar. So I'm like, I don't need reconstruction. And it's funny because I also work with the Male Breast Cancer Global Alliance, and they have a number of webinars per year. And one of their webinars coming up is reconstruction in men. And should it be a conversation? I said to the executive director, I said, when I was offered reconstruction with a chuckle. They were like, oh, do you want reconstruction? Haha, like tongue in cheek. I was never given any reasons about why I should think about it. I was just half-heartedly told, nah, you don't really want this, do you? And I'm like, I guess not. I think the conversations in breast cancer need to be conversations in breast cancer, regardless of the gender. Reconstructing breast can be a conversation in any gender. It doesn't matter. It's mostly, obviously, in the female side of things, but it doesn't have to be.
I think you are 100% correct. I think that this is the entire reason why we have conversations like this, because cancer is not a light subject. And there's a lot of people out there that don't know the right thing to say, don't know how to proceed. And no one's expecting to have cancer. You're going to think it's not going to be me. And then all of a sudden it's you.
Right.
And you go through these different stages of how to navigate everything. There's really no roadmap. You'll get the treatment from your doctors and they'll be like, okay, this is it. But kind of like you said afterwards, where you finish treatment and those 6 months afterwards where you're most depressed, it's hard because you're trying to live a normal life, but your life will never be the same as it was before treatment.
If I was Jake 1.0 before I went through my big change and that was Jake 2.0, well, we don't go back to Jake 2.0. I've had 2 years of chemo and surgeries and life experiences and a changed perspective that you have to figure out what Jake 3.0 is. It can't be about Jake 2.0 anymore, right? It has to be about Jake 3.0. I can take all of those lessons that I learned over those 2 years of me working, but I have to use that to inform the person that I am now. My ability to keep my mouth shut on certain things. I think when you get cancer, your filter comes off a little bit. And so my ability to be like, yeah, I'm just not going to put up with that anymore. Your ability to put up with the BS is not something that you normally can do anymore as a cancer patient. And it doesn't matter, even you don't have to be metastatic. You can be stage 1, grade 1, you're in and out of surgery in a couple, whatever. It changes your mentality. It changes your outlook on life. It changes your ability to put up with BS. And so you're going to call things for what they are. I always tell my team and my support team that we're going to call things out, but we're also going to call things out and be on the right side of history. We're not just going to call things out and be on the, we're not just going to yell for the sake of yelling. There's so many organizations and so many men out there that when women are trying to have a conversation about breast cancer, they just interject every time. And it's like, and men, and I get that it's needed to interject the and men into things, but it's also really disruptive. And it also makes some breast cancer organizations not want to work with men because they think they're always going to do.
I think that's kind of where we go from there. And we say, you know what? We just need to continue to spread awareness and say, hey, this can happen in anyone. Let's all get checked out and be aware of the signs and the symptoms. And that's why I just think what you're doing is absolutely amazing as someone that's also has their own platform, trying to raise awareness, not only for brain cancer, but all different types of cancer. So no one has to fight alone. I truly salute you because it makes me feel like I'm a little bit less alone in this because obviously, we got to be vulnerable and honest and say things that are going to turn people's heads and be like, I can't believe you're putting that out there.
Right. It's important to say the hardest things out loud. That's what we say, the hardest things out loud.
Yeah. But before we go, I just want to know if you have any last words of encouragement for anyone else out there just battling through cancer in general?
You don't have to be the loudest voice in the room, but you should find your own voice. That's the most important thing. I get asked by lots of people, you've got 32,000 people that you're talking to. You know what? I started off with one. I started off with one person, and I just kept on talking to that one person until I got two. And that third person and that fourth person, they came along, right? And so people that are out there just trying, I don't know what to say to people. You do. You've got breast cancer. You can help other people understand that they can get it too. Doesn't matter if you're talking to 10 people on social, it doesn't matter. Getting the word out there is what matters. And so having and finding your voice, regardless of whether you think it or not, is really key. And I tell people all the time, I will be your biggest cheerleader. I find it now a little bit hard to keep up with all the comments and the shares and the likes, but I really try to do it because it's important for people to feel like they are valued and their voice is valued. So find your voice. Speak as loud as you're comfortable doing. If that's as loud as I am, then great. I am only able to do what I am able to do because of the 3 male breast cancer organizations that came before me that have been doing this for years, some of them almost 2 decades, right? They started off when nobody was listening. And now that people are starting to listen, I'm able to do my work because they did their work. And when somebody comes along 5 to 6 years from me that's going to be a much better advocate than me, he's going to lean on my work. And that's the way it needs to go. So I'll be happy to be somebody's stepping stone a few years down the line.
I love that. Well, thank you again so much for coming on. It was truly a pleasure, and especially you coming on during Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I just appreciate you once again spreading the word out so all of us can be more informed.
Thanks, Gwen. You guys are doing great work over there.
Thank you. Well, that is the end of today's episode of Combating Cancer. As always, please feel free to share this message to anyone who you might think need it or needs some extra encouragement. My door is always open. Please feel free to reach out if you want to be a guest or have a sponsorship inquiry. That is all I have for you guys. I will chat next Wednesday.